CEO laughs, find the error. I'll give you $10 million. But the shy waitress solves it instantly. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's story. In the heart of Manhattan, the hustle and bustle of the city echoed through the towering skyscrapers. Among these glass giants, there was a restaurant tucked away, its elegance often overlooked by the hurried crowd. La Belle Époque, one of the city's most exclusive dining spots, was where today's story begins. Christina Matthews had been working there for just under a year. At first glance, she seemed like any other waitress. Quiet, humble, and professional. But beneath her calm exterior, there was so much more. Christina's soft-spoken nature and shy demeanor made her easy to overlook. Most people didn't realize that she was not just another server. She had a deep knowledge of finance that she had taught herself over the years. She never talked about it. Her job, her life, they were just things she needed to get through to make ends meet. Today, however, everything was about to change. As Christina walked through the elegant dining area, her eyes caught a glimpse of a very familiar figure, Jack Anderson, the billionaire CEO known for his tech empire and ruthless business tactics. He was seated at table 7, a place that was usually reserved for high-profile clients. His sharp eyes scanned the menu, and without looking up, he ordered his drink. Christina made her way over, ready to take his order like she had with so many other guests. But something was different this time. Jack, never one to shy away from asserting dominance, looked up briefly and smirked. "I've got a challenge for you," he said, tapping the menu with his finger. "Find the error in this financial model, and I'll give you $10 million. How's that for a bet?" Christina hesitated for a moment. She wasn't a fool. She had seen this before. Rich, powerful people toying with others for amusement. But something about his tone made her pause. Jack had no idea who she was. He assumed she was just another waitress, someone unworthy of his time. She took a breath, her fingers lightly resting on the edge of the menu. "I'll look at it," she said, keeping her voice steady. "But I don't think your $10 million will be enough to fix your mistake." Jack laughed. It was a deep, confident sound. "You'll be surprised," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Find the error, and I'll make you $10 million richer. But I'm warning you, it's not as simple as you think." With that, he slid the financial document across the table. Christina glanced at it, already sensing the mistake. Jack had no idea that in another life, she might have been working in a much different field. Finance was her passion. She had studied it in her spare time, reading textbooks and online courses. Slowly, carefully, Christina examined the document. Her mind worked quickly, sifting through the numbers. A tiny error, a misplaced decimal, an overlooked detail. She could see it now. Without missing a beat, she pointed it out. Jack froze. He had expected a challenge. He had expected her to fumble and fail. But here she was, solving the problem instantly. The smile faded from his face as he realized that this was not a simple waitress. Christina looked at him, her voice calm but firm. "The error is right here. You've miscalculated the return on investment by about 4%. This would have caused major issues down the line, especially with your investors." Jack's jaw tightened. He couldn't believe it. "How did you?" he started, but the words caught in his throat. It wasn't just about the mistake. It was about the woman sitting in front of him, a woman he had underestimated from the start. Christina's heart raced as she watched Jack Anderson, the CEO she had never dreamed of speaking to, stare at her with disbelief. The quiet confidence she had tried so hard to keep hidden was now exposed. Jack's eyes widened, and for a moment, the powerful CEO seemed like a mere man, caught off guard by her intelligence. The silence between them was thick, and Christina could feel the weight of the moment. She stood there, her hand still on the document, waiting for him to respond. She had done it. She had solved the problem he thought no one would be able to. She had done it instantly. "How did you?" Jack's voice trailed off, but Christina didn't wait for him to finish. She had no time for pleasantries. She had done what he asked. She was about to move on when he spoke again, this time with more interest. "Wait, are you sure? I mean really sure." His voice was steady now, though there was a note of surprise, maybe even a little respect. "I'm sure," Christina replied, her tone calm, though inside, she could feel the excitement building. She had never expected this, but she wasn't about to let it show. She had come from a small town, worked hard to get to where she was, and this moment was proof of everything she had fought for. Jack leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, clearly processing what had just happened. "I have to admit," he said, breaking the silence, "I didn't expect that. Not from someone like you." His words stung a little, but Christina kept her composure. "I didn't expect you to expect anything," she said, a small smile creeping onto her lips. It wasn't arrogance, it was simply the truth. Jack's face softened, his expression shifting from disbelief to genuine curiosity. He had been testing her, trying to see if she would fail. Instead, she had proven herself to be more than just a waitress. She had proven she was someone who belonged in a world far beyond the confines of her apron and order pad. He studied her for a moment, as though trying to piece together the puzzle that was Christina Matthews. She had no idea what was going on inside his mind, but she was starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was more to this meeting than she had originally thought. "I have a proposition for you," Jack said, his voice suddenly more serious. Christina felt her pulse quicken, but she didn't let it show. She had heard these kinds of words before. She had been offered opportunities by people who promised the world but never delivered. She had learned to be cautious. "I'm listening," she said, keeping her voice steady. "You've got something I need," Jack continued, leaning forward, his eyes focused on hers. "And I'm not just talking about financial advice. I'm talking about real talent. Something my team doesn't have." Christina's eyebrows furrowed slightly, confused by his sudden change in tone. "What are you talking about?" she asked. Jack took a deep breath, clearly weighing his words. "I know you're not just a waitress. I know you're hiding something, and I want to help you bring it out. I can offer you a position at Anderson Capital, a role where you'll be able to use your knowledge, your skills, everything you have. And the best part? You won't have to wait tables anymore." The offer hung in the air, heavy with implications. Christina had always dreamed of leaving the world of serving, but she had never imagined she would get an opportunity like this. Her first instinct was to refuse, to go back to the world she knew, the world where she was comfortable. But there was something in Jack's offer that made her hesitate. Maybe it was the fact that for the first time in her life, someone saw her as more than just a waitress. Maybe it was the promise of something more, something she had worked so hard to achieve. She had always kept her dreams hidden, buried beneath the weight of her daily grind. But now, they seemed to be within reach. "I don't know," Christina said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's too soon. I don't know if I'm ready for something like that." Jack's gaze softened, as though he understood the hesitation. "Take your time. Think it over," he said, his voice gentle now. "But know this, Christina. You've got something special, and I don't want to see you waste it." His words echoed in her mind as she walked away from the table. She had always believed in herself, but hearing those words from someone like Jack, someone so powerful, made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The world was suddenly bigger than it had ever been before, and Christina wasn't sure if she was ready for it. But she knew one thing for sure. She had just taken the first step towards something life-changing. And there was no going back. "I don't know what to say," Christina thought as she sat down in her small apartment later that evening, her fingers tracing the edge of Jack Anderson's business card. The gleaming white paper was a stark contrast to the dimly lit surroundings of her apartment, where the walls were cracked and the furniture was secondhand. She had been working here for months, but that card, the one in her hand, seemed to symbolize an entirely different world, a world she never thought she'd have access to. She stared at it for a long moment, trying to imagine what her life could be like if she took Jack's offer. The opportunity he had presented was a dream, one that so many people would give anything to have. But for Christina, it was terrifying. She had always been content with the quiet, humble life she had built for herself. She had never wanted to reach for more than she could handle. But now, with the promise of a career in finance, of making more money than she had ever imagined, it was hard to deny the lure. "You've got something special," Jack had said. And she knew he was right. She had spent years teaching herself financial modeling, stock market strategies, and investing, all on her own. The idea that someone saw her potential, that someone who had the power to make her dreams a reality believed in her, was both overwhelming and flattering. But it was also scary. She had built this life from the ground up, and suddenly, she was being asked to leave it behind. To walk away from the world she knew and into one that was foreign, intimidating, and uncertain. She shook her head and stood up, pacing back and forth across the room. Her small space felt suffocating now, like a cage she had outgrown. The thought of being stuck here forever, of never taking a chance, was worse than the unknown. The world outside was calling to her, and she knew that if she didn't take the leap now, she might never have another chance. But what about her life here? What about the people who had come to rely on her? Would she be abandoning everything she had worked for? She needed time to think. Christina grabbed her coat and left the apartment, walking aimlessly through the streets of Manhattan. The city was alive at night, the neon lights flickering in the dark, the sound of taxis and people talking filling the air. The energy of the city was intoxicating. It reminded her of the feeling she had when she first moved to New York, full of dreams, full of hope. She walked past the coffee shop where she used to study for her finance exams, the familiar corner store where she bought her lunch every day, and the small diner where she had worked for so long. She stopped outside for a moment, looking at the lights inside. It felt like a lifetime ago that she had walked through those doors as just another waitress. But now, everything was different. The world was opening up, and the possibilities were endless. The phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Jack. She hesitated before answering. "Christina?" His voice was smooth and calm, as if he already knew she had been thinking about his offer. "Have you had a chance to think it over?" She paused, taking a deep breath. "I'm still not sure," she said honestly. "This is a big decision. I don't know if I'm ready to leave everything behind." Jack was silent for a moment, and then he spoke again, his tone understanding. "I get it. It's a lot to take in, but I think you're ready for it. You have a gift, Christina. You've spent years studying on your own, learning something that most people only dream of. You've got the skills, the drive, and the intelligence. Don't let fear hold you back." His words hit her hard. He was right. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and now it was time to take a chance. The fear she felt was only natural. But if she stayed here, if she kept playing it safe, she would always wonder what could have been. "I'll do it," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "I'll take the job." Jack's voice brightened immediately. "I knew you'd make the right choice. Welcome to Anderson Capital, Christina. You won't regret it." As she hung up the phone, Christina felt a rush of excitement and fear all at once. She was stepping into a new life, one that was filled with uncertainty but also incredible potential. There was no turning back now. She had made her decision, and now, she was ready to see where it would take her. Christina could hardly believe what was happening. Just a few days ago, she had been serving tables at La Belle Époque, the glamorous Manhattan restaurant, never imagining that she'd soon be walking through the sleek, glass doors of Anderson Capital's headquarters. She took a deep breath as she entered the building for the first time. The polished floors and towering glass walls made her feel as though she had stepped into a world she was never meant to be a part of. Her heels clicked against the marble, echoing through the empty lobby. As she walked toward the elevator, her heart pounded in her chest. Was she really ready for this? Was she really ready to leave behind the simple life she had known and step into the unknown? But there was no turning back now. Jack's words rang in her ears. "You've got something special." She couldn't ignore the truth in them. Over the years, she had taught herself everything she knew about finance, poring over textbooks late into the night after finishing her shifts. Now, it was her time to prove herself. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside, pressing the button for the 87th floor. The ride up felt endless, but it gave her time to think. She had never imagined herself in a position like this, and now that she was here, she couldn't help but wonder if she was truly prepared for what was to come. She had no formal finance background, no Ivy League degree, just the knowledge she had gained through years of hard work and dedication. But what if that wasn't enough? What if she wasn't what they were expecting? The elevator dinged, and the doors opened to the vast, modern office space of Anderson Capital. The walls were adorned with sleek, contemporary art, and the atmosphere was one of quiet intensity. This was a place where decisions were made, where billions of dollars were at stake. Christina stepped out, her nerves rising again. A woman at the front desk looked up from her computer, offering a polite smile. "Good morning, Miss Matthews," she said, checking the list on her screen. "Mr. Anderson is expecting you." Please follow me. Christina nodded and followed the woman down a long corridor. The space was everything Christina had imagined: pristine, organized, and filled with people who seemed to be moving at a speed that left her breathless. She had never seen anything like it. When they reached a large office at the end of the hall, the woman knocked gently before opening the door. "Mr. Anderson, Christina Matthews has arrived," she announced, stepping aside to allow Christina to enter. Jack Anderson stood from behind his desk as she walked in, extending his hand with a warm smile. "Christina, welcome. It's great to finally meet you in person." His presence was commanding, and for a moment, Christina felt a surge of nervousness. She had been preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, she was unsure of what to say. "Thank you," she said, shaking his hand. "I'm excited to be here." Jack gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "Please, have a seat. Let's talk business." As Christina sat down, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. This wasn't just a job interview. This was her chance to prove herself, to show Jack and the rest of Anderson Capital that she was more than just a waitress. "I've been reviewing your resume," Jack began, leaning back in his chair. "I have to say, I'm impressed. Your knowledge of finance, your self-discipline, it's clear you've got potential. But potential isn't enough in this business. I want to know if you've got the drive to succeed." Christina nodded, her voice steady. "I'm ready. I've spent years teaching myself everything I know. I'm not here by accident. I'm here because I want to succeed, just like everyone else in this room." Jack studied her for a moment, his gaze intense. "I like that," he said with a nod. "But you'll need more than just knowledge and drive. You'll need to think outside the box, work long hours, and be prepared to fail, and fail hard, before you succeed. Are you ready for that?" Christina didn't hesitate. "I've been working for years with nothing but my own resources. I've already failed many times, but I always got back up." Jack smiled slightly. "Good. That's the mindset we need here. Let's get to work." Over the next few hours, Christina was thrown into the fast-paced world of finance. She found herself analyzing market trends, reviewing investment opportunities, and making decisions she had never imagined herself making. The pressure was immense, but she thrived in it. She had always been the underdog, but now, she felt like she was on the edge of something big. By the end of the day, Jack had asked her to stay late to work on a new project. She was exhausted, but she knew this was her chance to prove herself. She stayed, working well into the evening, her mind focused on the tasks at hand. As she left the office later that night, Christina couldn't help but smile. It had been a long day, but it had also been the start of something incredible. She had taken the first step into a world she had only dreamed of, and she was ready to keep moving forward. Christina had never been so tired in her life. The first few weeks at Anderson Capital had been a whirlwind of learning and intense pressure. She was still trying to adjust to the speed of the corporate world, the constant meetings, the fast-paced problem-solving, and the late nights spent poring over financial data. But she had made it through. The exhaustion, though, was starting to take its toll. She had learned more in these few weeks than she ever thought possible, and Jack Anderson had become more than just her boss. He had become her mentor, pushing her to take on bigger and more complex challenges. She had solved a few major problems already, and every time she did, Jack was there, giving her that approving look that made her feel like she was truly capable of anything. But despite her success, Christina couldn't shake the feeling that there was still a lot more she had to prove. She had risen quickly through the ranks of Anderson Capital, but the constant question nagged at her. Was she really good enough? Was she worthy of the opportunity Jack had given her? These thoughts consumed her as she sat at her desk one Friday afternoon, staring at the screen. She was working on a new project, a high-stakes financial analysis for one of their biggest clients. It was the type of project that could either make or break her reputation within the company. The weight of the task was heavy, but she had done her homework. She had been working on the numbers for days, digging deep into every line item, making sure she didn't miss a single detail. This project had to be perfect. Christina's phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from Jack. "Can you meet me in my office? I need to discuss something with you." Her heart skipped a beat. Jack had always been direct, but his messages lately had become more cryptic. She stood up, walked out of her office, and made her way to Jack's office on the top floor. As she entered, she was greeted by his usual confident but calm demeanor. "Close the door behind you, Christina," Jack said, his voice steady. She did as he asked and turned to face him, her mind racing. Have a seat. Jack gestured toward the chair in front of his desk. Christina sat down, trying to steady her breathing. The tension in the air was palpable. I've been following your work closely, Jack began. And I have to say, I'm impressed. You've got an exceptional mind for finance, and you've picked things up faster than I expected. Christina's chest tightened at the praise. She was proud of the progress she had made, but part of her still feared she wasn't enough. Jack continued, but I need to see if you can handle the next step. We've got an opportunity to take on a new, high-profile client, and I want you to lead the project. It's a big deal, a multi-million-dollar deal that could change the future of Anderson Capital. Are you ready for that? Christina's mind raced. This was the moment she had been waiting for. This was her chance to prove herself, to show that she wasn't just a waitress turned finance guru, but someone who truly belonged in this world. I'm ready, she said, the words coming out more confidently than she felt. Jack nodded. I thought you'd say that. The client has a complicated portfolio, and they're expecting someone who can handle the pressure. I'm putting a lot of trust in you, Christina. You're the one I believe can pull this off. His words felt like a weight and a challenge all at once. He wasn't giving her an easy out. He was putting everything on the line by giving her this responsibility. But it wasn't just about Jack's belief in her. It was about her belief in herself. I won't let you down, Christina replied, determined to rise to the occasion. Jack smiled, a glint of approval in his eyes. I know you won't. I've seen the way you work. You've got the drive, the skills, and the tenacity to make it happen. Now it's time to take it to the next level. With that, he stood up, offering his hand. Good luck, Christina. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do. She shook his hand firmly, the gravity of the task ahead of her settling in. This was no longer just about proving she belonged. It was about showing everyone, especially herself, that she could do this. She had spent years learning, struggling, and working her way up from nothing. Now, it was her time to shine. She left Jack's office, her mind already spinning with strategies and ideas for the new project. There was no turning back now. This was the opportunity she had worked for, and she was determined not to let it slip through her fingers. She returned to her desk, where the team was already waiting. The numbers were laid out in front of her, ready for the analysis. With renewed focus, Christina dove into the work, her mind sharp, her confidence growing. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for, and she was ready to take on the challenge. Christina had never been under so much pressure in her life. The project Jack had given her was nothing short of monumental. The client was a high-profile hedge fund that had been underperforming for years, and they had just one chance to turn things around. Christina was tasked with analyzing their portfolio, uncovering the flaws, and presenting a strategy that would save their reputation and Anderson Capital's standing in the industry. For the past week, she had been working around the clock, diving deep into the client's financials, running calculations, and coming up with strategies that were bold yet feasible. Every number, every assumption had to be perfect. There could be no mistakes. She spent sleepless nights at her desk, her eyes glued to the screen, only breaking for quick meals or the occasional walk around the office to clear her head. The weight of the task ahead was heavy, but the thought of failure kept her moving forward. She had learned quickly that this was the price of success in the corporate world. As the day of the presentation drew closer, the pressure only increased. Jack had been checking in on her regularly, pushing her to keep up the pace, but also giving her space to make the final call on the strategy. His trust in her was both empowering and terrifying. She knew this was her moment, the one she had been preparing for since the day she walked into Anderson Capital. The presentation room was set. The team was waiting, and Christina was about to step into a room full of the most influential figures in the company. As she walked in, she could feel the eyes of the executives on her. The client was sitting at the head of the table, looking as tense as she felt. Jack was already there, seated at the far end, his expression unreadable. Christina adjusted the papers in front of her and stood tall. Good morning, everyone, she began, her voice steady but her heart racing. Thank you for the opportunity to present our analysis and strategy for turning around this portfolio. She clicked the remote, and the first slide of her presentation appeared on the large screen. The room fell silent as the numbers flashed before their eyes. Christina began walking them through her findings, explaining the areas of underperformance, the risk management issues, and the missed opportunities. She could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but she pushed through, focusing on the data, on the solutions she had developed. As the presentation went on, Christina could see the expressions around the table shift. The clients seemed to lean forward, listening more intently. Jack gave her a subtle nod from the back of the room, a silent gesture of encouragement. She pushed on, outlining the bold changes she recommended, diversifying their investments, reallocating resources, and adopting a more aggressive approach to emerging markets. This strategy, she said, will not only stop the losses, but it will position this portfolio for exponential growth in the next 5 years. There was a brief pause. The room was silent, and for a moment, Christina thought she had lost them. But then one of the senior executives, a man in his 50s who had been watching her closely, spoke up. "This is ambitious," he said, his voice low but thoughtful. "Are you sure the risk is worth it?" Christina met his gaze, unfazed. "The risk is high, but the reward is even greater. This is about more than just surviving. It's about thriving. If we stick to the old ways, we'll be stuck in mediocrity. It's time to take the leap." There was a murmur of agreement from the table. The tension in the room had shifted. The executives were no longer just listening, they were engaging. Jack stood up, his sharp eyes never leaving Christina. "She's right," he said, his voice commanding. "This is the kind of thinking that will set us apart from the competition. Let's move forward with this plan." The room erupted into conversation, and for a brief moment, Christina allowed herself a small smile. She had done it. She had delivered a plan that not only impressed her team, but also gave the client hope for the future. As the meeting wrapped up, Jack pulled her aside. "Excellent work, Christina," he said, his tone approving. "You've proven yourself. This is only the beginning." She felt a rush of pride as she nodded, but the exhaustion from the past few days was starting to catch up with her. "Thank you, Jack," she said. "I couldn't have done it without the support of the team." Jack gave her a knowing look. "You did this. Now, take a break. You've earned it." As she walked out of the conference room, Christina felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had delivered, and the future was wide open. She had stepped up to the challenge and proved to herself and everyone else that she belonged here, at the top of the game. There was still a long road ahead, but today, she had won. And that was enough. Christina had never imagined how quickly her life could change. Just a few weeks ago, she had been working tirelessly in the bustling, high-stress environment of Anderson Capital, proving herself again and again. Now, her world had shifted, and with it, her confidence. The recent success with the hedge fund client had catapulted her to a place she never thought she would reach. But success brought its own challenges. With her new position at the company, Christina found herself facing greater expectations. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. Her team had begun to rely on her insights, her decisions, and her ability to deliver. It wasn't just about solving problems anymore. It was about becoming a leader in the room, someone others could turn to for guidance. It was exciting, but it was also overwhelming. Christina spent her evenings at her apartment, poring over new reports, analyzing data, and brainstorming strategies. She couldn't afford to slow down. There were too many eyes on her now. Every move she made was under scrutiny, and she knew that if she faltered, she could lose everything she had worked so hard for. It was a restless night. She had finally decided to get some sleep when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Groggily, she reached for it and saw Jack's name on the screen. "Christina, I need to talk to you. There's a new project coming up. You'll be leading it. I'll explain more tomorrow." That was it. No further details, just the challenge. She rubbed her eyes, her mind racing. Another new project? Wasn't she already stretched thin? But it didn't matter. If Jack had entrusted her with it, then she had to take it on. She knew this was part of the game. You either rose to the occasion, or you got left behind. The next morning, she arrived at the office early, determined to start her day with a clear mind. She settled into her desk, sipping coffee as she waited for the meeting. When Jack walked in, he had his usual confident stride, but there was something different in his eyes this time. "Good morning," he said, sitting across from her. "I need you to head up a new venture. A partnership with a major tech company. They want us to help guide their investments, but there's a catch. They're a startup, and their financial records are a mess. I need you to go in, figure out where they're losing money, and fix it." Christina's stomach churned. A startup? With messy finances? This was more than just a typical project. It was a minefield. "How bad is it?" she asked. already dreading what she might uncover. Worse than we expected, Jack replied, his voice firm. But I know you can handle it. You've got the skills, and you're quick on your feet. This will be a test of everything you've learned. Christina nodded. She wasn't about to let Jack down, but the task felt daunting. The idea of walking into a room full of tech experts, people who had built their company from the ground up, and telling them their financials were a disaster was not something she was looking forward to. But she knew she had to do it. When do I start? She asked. This afternoon. You'll be meeting with their team at 2 o'clock. I want you to take the lead on this. You're the best person for the job. Jack's confidence in her was unwavering, but Christina felt the pressure building inside. She wasn't sure she was ready to take on something so massive. But there was no turning back now. The rest of the day was a blur. She spent hours preparing for the meeting, reviewing their financial statements, analyzing trends, and trying to piece together the full picture. When the time finally came, she walked into the meeting room, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The tech company's executives were already seated, their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Christina introduced herself, projecting the confidence she had built over the past few months. But inside, she felt the weight of the moment. As the meeting began, she started with the most pressing issues: cash flow problems, poor investment decisions, and a lack of clear financial goals. The executives listened, their expressions unreadable. Christina could feel their eyes on her, but she pushed through. You've got a solid product, but your financial strategy is holding you back, she said, pointing to specific figures on the screen. If you want to grow, you need to focus on your capital allocation. You can't afford to keep burning through cash without seeing a return. The room was silent. Then one of the executives, a middle-aged woman with short blonde hair, spoke up. And how do you propose we fix that? We've tried everything, and nothing's worked. Christina's mind raced. She had been prepared for this question, but now that it was on the table, she had to think quickly. You need to start by restructuring your investments. Cut out the low-return projects and focus on your core strengths. Focus on revenue generation, not just expansion. She paused, watching their reactions. And hire a full-time financial strategist. Someone who can manage your funds and make sure you're making the right decisions every step of the way. The conversation went on for another hour as Christina laid out her plan. When the meeting finally ended, she felt both exhausted and energized. She had faced her fears head-on and come out with a solid plan that could turn this startup around. Jack met her outside the meeting room with a smile. Well done, Christina. I knew you had it in you. His praise felt like a weight lifted off her shoulders. It was the validation she needed, the confirmation that she had what it took to succeed in this world. The day was long, but as Christina made her way home that night, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had taken on the impossible and come out on top. It was a victory, but she knew it was only the beginning. The weeks that followed Christina's successful presentation to the tech startup's executives were a blur of high stakes and intense work. The momentum she had built in the company was only growing, and she was beginning to feel like the weight of the corporate world was no longer just something she was carrying. It was something she was now mastering. Her days at Anderson Capital had gone from being a chaotic, fast-paced blur to a challenging yet exhilarating rhythm. Every morning, she stepped into the office with a sense of purpose, ready to tackle whatever came her way. But despite her success, Christina knew that there was a new challenge on the horizon. Jack had been giving her more responsibility lately, pushing her to take on projects that were increasingly complex. Each project seemed to come with higher expectations and, even more daunting, the pressure to deliver. As her confidence grew, so did the expectations from her team. The pressure was something she had come to expect in this new world, but it wasn't easy to ignore. It was late one evening when Jack called her into his office again. The work she had been doing was good, but Jack wasn't known for just handing out praise. He pushed people harder, expecting more. As Christina walked into his office, she could feel the tension in the air. Jack was sitting behind his desk, scanning over some documents. His face was unreadable, as always. Sit down, Christina, he said, looking up briefly as she entered. She took a seat, her stomach tightening. I've been looking at the numbers, Jack began, his voice steady. The tech company is doing better than we thought. Your strategy was solid, and their portfolio is starting to show signs of recovery. Christina felt a small surge of pride. She had worked tirelessly on that project. But, Jack continued, his gaze sharpening, There's another issue now. The hedge fund we're working with, the one that's been underperforming, their situation is worse than we anticipated. They need drastic changes, and they need them now. Christina's heart sank. The hedge fund was a big deal, one of the firm's largest clients. If she couldn't turn things around, it could cost Anderson Capital millions. What exactly are you asking me to do? She asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Jack leaned forward, his expression serious. I need you to come up with a new strategy for them. Something bold. Something that will turn their performance around quickly. I've got another team working on the project, but I want you to lead it. I believe you're the best person for the job. You've handled everything else up until now, and I know you can do this too. Christina felt the weight of his words. This wasn't just another project. It was the kind of challenge that could make or break her career. I understand, she said, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. I'll need access to all their financials, projections, and the reports from the past few quarters. I'll need to speak with the team working on this as well. Jack nodded, his eyes locked on hers. You'll have everything you need. But time is of the essence. They expect results within the next month. As Christina left Jack's office, she felt the full weight of her new responsibility settling in. The pressure was immense, but she had no choice but to dive in. There was no turning back now. The next few days were a blur of numbers, reports, and strategy sessions. Christina found herself working late into the night, analyzing every financial report, every risk factor, and every potential opportunity. She knew that the hedge fund's problems weren't going to be solved with simple adjustments. She needed something revolutionary, something that would catch their attention and show them that Anderson Capital had the expertise to turn things around. As the days went by, she developed a new plan. It was risky, yes, but it was bold. She proposed shifting their investment focus from traditional sectors to emerging markets, targeting industries that had been ignored by most major players. Her plan would require significant restructuring, but it was their only shot at recovering the losses and growing in the long term. The more she worked on it, the more confident she became. This was her time to shine, to prove that she was not just a temporary player in this high-stakes game. She was here to stay. When the day of the presentation finally arrived, Christina stood in front of the hedge fund's executives, her heart pounding in her chest. She had spent days preparing, refining her pitch, and working through every potential question they might ask. The room was filled with silence as she began speaking. The road ahead for your portfolio isn't easy, but there is a way forward, and it starts with bold action, she began, her voice steady. As she went through her plan, Christina could see the executives listening closely, their skepticism beginning to fade. She spoke confidently about the emerging markets, about shifting their focus to industries poised for rapid growth. Her numbers were solid, and her strategy was clear. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, the head of the hedge fund's board leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. This is risky, he said, but I see the potential. I think you might be onto something. Christina held her breath as the room erupted into discussions. The board members were debating, weighing the risks and rewards. The tension in the room was palpable, but Christina stood firm. She had done everything she could, and now it was in their hands. After what seemed like an eternity, the head of the board spoke again. Let's do it. We'll move forward with this plan. Christina exhaled, a rush of relief flooding through her. She had done it. She had saved the hedge fund's portfolio. But as she walked out of the room, a new wave of realization hit her. This was only the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But for the first time since she started this journey, she felt like she was finally where she belonged. Christina couldn't shake the feeling that her recent success was both a victory and a new beginning. The pressure from the hedge fund presentation had subsided, but something bigger loomed just on the horizon. As she walked into the office that morning, she could feel the shift in the air. Her recent work had earned her the respect of the team, but now she was stepping into a whole new level of responsibility. The new challenge, as Jack had explained, would test her in ways she hadn't yet experienced. As the days passed, the tasks kept coming. Meetings with high-profile clients, reviewing massive portfolios, handling the fine details of high-stakes deals. All of it began to weigh on her. At times, Christina wondered if she had reached her limit. She had always been the quiet, determined worker, the one who stayed out of the spotlight, but now, she was in it. She was expected to lead. The quiet moments she once cherished had become rarer. It wasn't just the long hours that drained her. It was the constant challenge of balancing her work with the growing demands from the company. But in the midst of it all, there was Jack. His guidance had been invaluable, but his expectations were becoming even higher. Christina had begun to feel the weight of those expectations more and more. She had always admired his decisiveness, his clarity, but now it seemed like he was pushing her harder than ever. One afternoon, after another grueling meeting, Jack called her into his office. She stepped in, her nerves slightly rattled by the intensity of the day. Jack was already seated at his desk, reviewing documents as usual. "Christina," he said, his voice calm but authoritative, "I need you to take on another major project. The company we've been working with in the healthcare sector is facing a crisis. Their financials are worse than we thought, and they're looking to us to turn things around. I want you to lead the charge." Christina felt the weight of his words. Healthcare? It was a new arena for her. She had handled tech companies, hedge funds, and emerging markets, but healthcare was something else entirely. Still, she didn't hesitate. She had learned that hesitation was a luxury she could no longer afford. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady, though her mind was racing. Jack looked at her, a small smile forming on his lips. "I know you are. You've done well with everything I've thrown at you so far, but this one will require more than just good strategy. You'll need to be innovative and think beyond the usual frameworks. Can I count on you to deliver?" Christina nodded. She wasn't going to back down now. "You can count on me." Jack stood and walked over to the large window in his office, looking out over the skyline. "This is where you prove yourself, Christina. You're ready for this. I believe in you." She watched him, feeling a mix of pride and pressure. She had come so far, but the stakes were higher now. This project would be different. It wouldn't just test her skills, it would test her ability to think on her feet, to adapt, and to lead a team under intense pressure. "I won't let you down," she said quietly. Jack turned to face her, giving her a rare nod of approval. "I know you won't." With that, Christina left his office, her mind buzzing with the enormity of what was ahead. The healthcare sector was a complex, fast-moving field. She had no time to waste. The next few days were a whirlwind of research and meetings. She studied the company's financials, delved into their operational models, and learned about the challenges they were facing. She spoke with their executives, gaining insights into the problems they had overlooked and the opportunities they had missed. As the pieces began to fall into place, Christina realized that the situation was even worse than Jack had let on. The company's management structure was fragmented, with little coordination between departments. Their financial forecasting was outdated, and their investments had been misaligned with their core strengths. But despite the challenges, Christina could see the potential. The company had valuable assets that, with the right strategy, could be leveraged for growth. She spent long hours working on her proposal, crafting a plan that would address the company's immediate financial crisis while setting them up for long-term success. She would have to restructure their investments, cut down on underperforming areas, and redirect resources into more promising markets. But most importantly, she had to inspire confidence in a company that had been losing its grip on the future. It wasn't just about numbers anymore. It was about leadership. The day of the presentation arrived, and Christina was ready. She stood in front of the company's executives, feeling a familiar sense of determination. She had been through this before, facing a room full of skeptical eyes, delivering a strategy that was bold but necessary. She started her presentation, outlining the company's weaknesses and the opportunities that lay ahead. The executives listened intently as she detailed her plan, and for the first time, she could see their doubts begin to fade. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. When she finished, there was a brief silence. Then, the CEO of the healthcare company spoke up. "This is risky," he said, his voice cautious. "But I believe you're right. We've been stuck in the past, but this could be the way forward." Christina felt a surge of relief, but she didn't let herself relax. "Not yet. It will be a challenge," she said, her voice steady. "But I believe this is the only way to restore the company to its former success." The room fell into quiet conversation as the executives deliberated. Christina stood quietly, watching as they debated. When the CEO spoke again, his words confirmed what she had hoped. "Let's do it. We'll move forward with your plan." Christina let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She had done it again. She had faced another challenge and come out on top. But this victory felt different. This time, she had led the charge, and it was only the beginning. The journey ahead would be long. But for the first time, Christina felt truly ready for whatever came next. The weeks following the presentation to the healthcare company were filled with an unrelenting pace of work. Christina had successfully laid out a bold plan, one that had been approved by the company's board, and now it was up to her to execute it. She dove into the project with her usual focus and determination. The task before her was massive, restructuring an entire company's financial foundation, making it leaner and more focused, while also ensuring that the employees and leadership bought into the changes she had proposed. It wasn't just about numbers anymore. It was about shifting mindsets. Every day, Christina found herself immersed in strategy meetings, working closely with the company's finance team to iron out the details. She had to oversee the cutting of underperforming sectors, the reallocation of funds, and most critically, the new investment strategies she had proposed. This was her moment, the culmination of everything she had worked for since stepping into Anderson Capital. But with this much responsibility came an overwhelming sense of pressure. Late one evening, as she reviewed yet another batch of financial reports, Jack called her into his office. It had been a long day, and Christina was already mentally exhausted, but she knew she couldn't avoid him. The moment she stepped into his office, Jack's serious expression greeted her. He was sitting at his desk, looking over a few documents. As she took her seat across from him, he didn't waste any time. "Christina," he began, his tone calm but intense. "I've been reviewing your progress on the healthcare project. The numbers are looking good, but there's one issue I need you to address. The board is worried about the risk involved in your proposed strategy. They're questioning whether this is the right time for such a big move." Christina felt the weight of his words. She had always been confident in her strategy, but now she had to face the reality that the board, and even Jack, were uncertain. She had anticipated challenges, but this was different. She was being asked to justify her every decision. "I've considered the risks," she replied, her voice steady. "But the current trajectory of the company is unsustainable. They need to make bold moves now, or they risk falling further behind. The markets are evolving, and if they don't adapt, they'll be left behind. This is the only way forward." Jack studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "I agree with you, but the board is not convinced. They want proof that this plan can deliver results, and fast. You need to show them why this is the best decision, and how it will pay off in the short term." Christina knew that Jack's confidence in her was unwavering, but she also understood that the stakes were higher now. This wasn't just about her reputation. This was about the future of the company she had worked so hard to get into. She had to rise to the occasion. "I understand," she said, her resolve hardening. "I'll gather the data and create projections to show them that the risk is worth it. I'll prove it." Jack nodded, his expression softening slightly. "I know you will. But just remember, Christina, the pressure is going to continue. The higher you go, the more people will be watching you. Don't let that break you." Christina nodded, taking in his words. She knew Jack was right. This was her moment, but it was also a test. The board needed reassurance that her plan wasn't just a gamble, but a well-thought-out strategy that would yield results. Over the next few days, Christina worked tirelessly to prepare the data. She collected reports from the past quarters, analyzed the market trends, and created a set of financial projections that would demonstrate the short-term benefits of the restructuring plan. She stayed in the office late, only leaving when the building started to empty out. The pressure was immense, but Christina was used to this. She had fought for every inch of success she had gained, and she wasn't about to stop now. The day of the meeting arrived. As Christina sat in the boardroom, presenting her projections, she could feel the eyes of the board members on her, their skepticism palpable. She went through each number, explaining the logic behind every decision she had made. When she finished, the room was silent. Then, one of the senior board members spoke. "You're proposing a lot of changes, Christina. How can we be sure that the short-term gains will offset the risk? We're not just looking for growth. We're looking for security." Christina took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. "I understand the concern, but I've accounted for every variable. The markets are volatile, yes, but we've chosen sectors with the highest growth potential. By making these adjustments now, we're positioning the company for long-term sustainability." The room remained quiet as the board members deliberated, their voices hushed but urgent. Christina watched as they exchanged glances, trying to gauge each other's reactions. It felt like an eternity before the head of the board finally spoke. "I think we've heard enough. Let's vote." The vote was swift, and the outcome was clear. Christina's strategy was approved. The room erupted in quiet murmurs of approval as the board members nodded in agreement. As Christina walked out of the meeting room, a rush of relief flooded through her. She had done it. The project was moving forward, and now, it was up to the healthcare company to implement the changes. Jack was waiting for her outside the room, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You did it," he said, his voice full of approval. "You proved yourself, Christina. This is just the beginning." Christina allowed herself a moment to savor the victory. But she knew Jack was right. This was just the beginning. There was still so much work to be done, so many challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, she felt ready for it. She had faced the pressure, and she had come out on top. The future was wide open, and Christina was determined to make the most of it. Christina had barely had time to process the relief of securing the approval for her healthcare project when another challenge landed on her desk. The following weeks were a whirlwind of new assignments and escalating expectations. Anderson Capital was growing at a rapid pace, and with that growth, her role had expanded once again. She was now responsible for overseeing the integration of her strategy within the healthcare company's operations, while also managing other projects. The work was demanding, and Christina found herself working long hours, often skipping meals and missing out on moments of peace. The long hours were starting to wear on her. The weight of her position in the company, coupled with the responsibility of leading such high-stakes projects, had left little time for anything else. The nights she spent in her small apartment felt too quiet. She missed the simplicity of her previous life, the days when her biggest worry had been making it through her shift at the restaurant. But now, every day presented a new challenge. It was early one morning when she received another call from Jack. The urgency in his voice was clear, even before he spoke. "Christina," he began, "there's an urgent situation with one of our high-net-worth clients. I need you to head over to their office this afternoon. They're facing a potential financial crisis, and I believe you're the right person to handle it." Christina felt her pulse quicken. A financial crisis for a high-net-worth client was not something to take lightly. These clients were the backbone of Anderson Capital, and their success was a reflection of the company's own reputation. "What's the situation?" she asked, trying to focus her mind. Jack filled her in on the details. The client, a well-established real estate mogul, had made a series of risky investments that were beginning to unravel. Their portfolio was in disarray, and if they didn't act fast, they risked losing everything. Christina knew this was going to be one of the most challenging situations she had faced yet. She had no time to waste. That afternoon, she found herself walking into the office of the client, a grand, sleek building that spoke of power and wealth. The mogul, Michael Blackwell, was waiting for her in his office. His face was stern, his eyes filled with concern as he motioned for her to sit. "Christina," he said, "I've heard good things about you. I need you to fix this. We've put everything into these investments, and now they're falling apart. We can't afford to lose it all." Christina nodded, the weight of the situation heavy on her shoulders. "I understand," she said. "I'll need to review the portfolio and the investment strategy in detail. I'll also need to meet with your team to understand the full scope of the issue." Michael's eyes narrowed, a hint of skepticism in his voice. "I hope you're as good as they say you are," he muttered. Christina didn't flinch. She had come to understand that people like Michael, people used to having control, would challenge her at every turn. But she was prepared. She reviewed the documents, meeting with key members of his team to gather the facts. It became clear that Michael had taken far too many risks. His portfolio was over-leveraged, with a number of speculative investments that had not panned out. Worse, there was a lack of liquidity in some of the holdings, which could lead to a massive cash crunch if not addressed immediately. Christina spent hours going over the data, reworking projections, and making adjustments to the strategy. She knew this was going to be a tough sell. Michael had a history of making bold, often reckless decisions, and getting him to agree to a more conservative approach would be challenging. But Christina wasn't backing down. She came up with a comprehensive plan that involved restructuring the portfolio, liquidating underperforming assets, and reallocating funds into safer, high-yield investments. She also suggested bringing in a financial strategist to help monitor the client's portfolio going forward, someone who could prevent such a situation from arising again. When she presented the plan to Michael, his expression was unreadable. He sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of his face as he processed the information. "This is drastic," he said, his voice low. "I don't know if I can agree to all of this. It feels like you're telling me to give up on everything I've built." Christina met his gaze, unflinching. "Mr. Blackwell, you've built something impressive, but it's at risk of collapsing. The only way forward is to stabilize your assets and rebuild. This plan will allow you to keep the foundation intact, while also positioning you for future growth." Michael was silent for a long time. Christina could see him weighing the options, the enormity of the decision weighing on him. Finally, he spoke. "Fine," he said. "Let's do it. But I'm counting on you to make this work." Christina breathed a silent sigh of relief, but she didn't let her guard down. This was only the beginning. The real work was ahead of her, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of confidence. She had faced another challenge head-on, and she had come through. As she left Michael's office, she was already thinking about the next steps, the meetings, and the strategies she would need to put into place. This was the world she had chosen, the world she had worked for. And as exhausting as it was, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. Christina had just wrapped up another intense day of meetings, but the weight of the past few months was starting to take its toll. The decisions she had made, the risks she had taken, were beginning to stack up. She was no longer just an employee at Anderson Capital. She was a leader, a person whose every move affected the future of the company. And while the praise and accolades had come in, so had the pressure. Her work with the healthcare company was progressing, and Michael Blackwell's portfolio was slowly starting to show signs of improvement, but it was nowhere near where it needed to be. Christina knew it was only a matter of time before the board would expect her to deliver more results, and the thought of disappointing them felt unbearable. That night, she sat in her office long after the rest of the staff had gone home. The office was quiet, the city lights outside a stark contrast to the silent emptiness inside. She glanced at the reports on her desk, the numbers and projections blurring together as her mind raced. There was a sense of unease that she couldn't shake off. She had always thrived in high-pressure situations, but now it felt like the weight of it all was beginning to crush her. She had never been one to shy away from a challenge, but it was becoming clear that the pace of this corporate world was unsustainable for her. Just as she was about to call it a night, her phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from Jack. "I need you to come to my office now." Her stomach dropped. She quickly grabbed her coat and made her way to his office. When she entered, Jack was standing by the window, staring out at the city. He didn't turn when she walked in. "Close the door behind you," he said. She did as instructed, wondering what this meeting was going to be about. "I've been watching your progress," Jack began, his voice low. "You've done great work, Christina, but I know you're feeling the pressure." Christina hesitated but nodded. Jack finally turned to face her, his gaze intense. "This next project, it's going to be the toughest one yet. But I know you're capable. I'm putting you in charge of leading a merger. A huge one. This is going to require all of your skills. The board expects results, and they expect them fast." Christina's heart raced. A merger? She had never been in charge of something so monumental. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure from the board would only escalate. "Who's the company?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Jack's expression didn't change. "It's a technology company. They've been struggling financially, but their potential is enormous. We've been eyeing them for months, and now we have the opportunity to take over. But this deal comes with a lot of risks. There's a lot of paperwork to go through, and the negotiations will be tough." Christina nodded, trying to steady her breathing. This was her moment, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for such a monumental task. "When do I start?" she asked, her voice stronger than she felt. "Tomorrow," Jack replied. "I know this is a big ask, but I'm confident you can handle it. I need you to start preparing the team for the negotiations. Get everything lined up. This will be a game changer for Anderson Capital." She looked at Jack, her mind spinning with everything she had to do. But there was no turning back. She had come this far, and there was no way she was going to back down now. The next day, Christina dove into the merger process headfirst. She met with the legal team, the financial analysts, and the executives who would be directly involved. The weight of the responsibility was overwhelming, but she had no time to focus on her doubts. The company she was about to merge with was in dire straits, and she needed to act fast. As the days went by, Christina spent countless hours reviewing contracts, meeting with key stakeholders, and negotiating terms. The stakes were higher than anything she had ever experienced, and the pressure to perform was immense. Every decision she made could potentially alter the future of Anderson Capital. Late one night, after a particularly exhausting meeting, Christina stood on the balcony of her office, staring out at the city. The view from the top of the building was breathtaking, but all she could focus on was the mountain of work ahead. She had no one to turn to but herself. It was both empowering and isolating. She had no choice but to keep going. As the negotiations progressed, Christina found herself making tough decisions that would affect not only the future of Anderson Capital, but also the lives of the employees at the technology company she was merging with. She had to balance the immediate financial needs with long-term growth, all while managing the intense pressure from the board. Each meeting was more intense than the last, but Christina pushed through, confident in her abilities. And then, after weeks of back and forth, the deal was finally done. The merger was approved. Christina could hardly believe it. She had pulled it off. It wasn't just a victory for her. It was a victory for Anderson Capital, for the future of the company, and for herself. The hard work, the long nights, the moments of doubt, all of it had paid off. When Jack called her into his office to congratulate her, she could see the pride in his eyes. "You did it, Christina," he said, his voice genuine. "This is a huge step forward for Anderson Capital, and it's all because of you." Christina smiled, but inside, she felt something shift. The victory was sweet, but she knew that the road ahead would be even harder. The stakes would keep rising, and with them, the pressure. But for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. She had earned her place at the top, and no matter how difficult the journey, she knew she was capable of taking it on. The weeks following the successful merger felt like a blur to Christina. The intense pressure she had been under for so long had finally eased, and she found herself in a place she hadn't fully anticipated. Anderson Capital was thriving, and the merger was now being hailed as one of the most successful in the company's history. The board had praised her efforts, and Jack had made it clear that her leadership was a key factor in the deal's success. Yet, despite all the praise, Christina couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes were higher than ever. Every decision she made, every project she took on, felt like it was under a magnifying glass. She had reached a point in her career where she had proven herself to be more than capable, but there was always the looming question: what next? The constant pressure to do more, to be more, was beginning to take a toll. She spent her days jumping from one high-profile meeting to another, overseeing complex deals and constantly strategizing for the future of Anderson Capital. There were days when it felt like the weight of the entire company rested on her shoulders. But despite all of that, something had changed within her. Christina had always thrived in challenging environments, but now, it wasn't just about proving she was good enough. It was about embracing her role and the leadership that had come with it. The pressure wasn't something to run from anymore. It was something she had learned to wield. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Jack called her into his office once again. This time, there was a different energy in the air. As she stepped inside, Jack's usual confident demeanor seemed tinged with something else. "Christina, take a seat," he said, his voice calm but serious. She sat down across from him, her mind already working through the possibilities of what this meeting could be about. "I've been keeping an eye on your progress," Jack began, not looking up from the papers in front of him. "And I think it's time we have a conversation about your future here at Anderson Capital." Christina's heart skipped a beat. Her future? Was this another challenge? A new project? Or something else entirely? Jack finally looked up, meeting her gaze. "You've been leading at an exceptional level, Christina. Your work on the merger, your ability to manage these high-stakes projects, and your growth as a leader have not gone unnoticed. And it's time for the next step." Christina leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. She had worked so hard to prove herself, but this conversation felt different. "What do you mean, the next step?" Jack's smile was small but genuine. "I'm offering you a partnership at Anderson Capital." Christina felt her breath catch. A partnership? This was the ultimate acknowledgement of her work, of her worth in the company. She had heard of others reaching this level, but never imagined it would be her. "You've earned it," Jack continued. I believe you're not just a rising star here, Christina. You're one of the cornerstones of the future of this firm. The partnership would be a recognition of that. But it's not just about the title. It's about taking on even more responsibility, guiding the direction of Anderson Capital, and making decisions that will shape its future. Christina sat in stunned silence, absorbing the weight of what Jack was offering. The partnership was not just a financial opportunity. It was a chance to have a voice in shaping the future of the company, to influence its strategy on a much deeper level. It was a step into a new world, one she had long dreamed of but never truly thought she could reach. I don't know what to say, she said quietly, still trying to process the offer. Jack chuckled, a rare sound from him. You don't have to say anything right now. Take some time to think it over. This is a big decision, and I want you to be ready for it. Christina nodded, though in her mind, she was already thinking ahead. This was the moment she had worked toward for years. She had fought hard for everything she had achieved, and now, the future was wide open. That evening, Christina found herself sitting in her apartment, staring out at the city skyline. The lights of Manhattan twinkled below her, a stark contrast to the quiet, introspective silence of her apartment. She reflected on her journey, the long hours, the sacrifices, the doubts. But she had done it. She had climbed higher than she ever thought possible. The offer of partnership wasn't just a reflection of her hard work. It was a reflection of her evolution as a leader, as someone who had learned to navigate the complexities of the corporate world with confidence and skill. The path ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be more challenges, more sacrifices, and more pressure. But Christina knew, deep down, that she was ready. She had proven herself, not just to the company, but to herself. She had faced every obstacle head-on and emerged stronger. The next chapter in her career would be one she would write on her own terms. And as the city lights flickered in the distance, Christina smiled to herself, ready for whatever came next. In this inspiring and heartfelt journey, we follow Christina as she rises from a humble waitress to a successful leader at Anderson Capital. Her story is filled with challenges, moments of doubt, and a relentless drive to prove herself. From tackling high-pressure projects to navigating the complex corporate world, Christina's journey showcases her determination to succeed. Along the way, she faces tough decisions, pushes through personal struggles, and ultimately earns the respect of her colleagues and superiors. This touching story of perseverance and self-discovery is a powerful reminder that with the right mindset, anyone can overcome obstacles and achieve greatness. Through all the trials and triumphs, Christina's story reflects the power of growth, resilience, and hard work. Her success serves as a beacon of hope, proving that no matter where you start, you can reach the highest heights if you never give up. These touching stories of ambition and success continue to inspire people everywhere, showing how strength and passion can lead to extraordinary achievements. For those who seek motivation in their own lives, Christina's touching story will resonate deeply. It's a narrative of overcoming adversity, making bold decisions, and rising to the top despite all odds. If you enjoy touching stories about overcoming challenges and personal growth, this one will remind you that anything is possible when you trust in yourself and take action.